As tensions swell in France in the wake of satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo shooting, millions of Muslims have firmly condemned the heinous crime. But French Muslims are now facing the prospect of an Islamophobic backlash.
We are also afraid of this amalgamation. That's not to say that we don't do our duty in renouncing this barbarism. No, we renounce it.
On Thursday alone, reports emerged of a number of attacks on mosques and prayer rooms in various locations across France. In one incident, a blast was reported at a kebab shop, shattering the shop's glass frontage.
An explosive engine was placed in front of the entrance of the snack restaurant The Imperial, located, as you were able to notice, a few meters away from the entrance of La Qaratayn Mosque.
However, despite Muslim condemnations, the deadly attacks this week appear certain to fuel rising anti-immigration movements across Europe and inflame a culture war. For their part, the United Nations have called for restraint.
We need a moment of calm now. We do not need retaliation. Neither Islam nor multiculturalism in Europe is to blame for the bloody attack 2 mornings ago, as some right-wing political leaders have already begun to say.
Anti-immigration movements across Europe are capitalizing from this week's events. In France, the attacks will no doubt make it easier for the Front National to make political gains and lure in more supporters. In Germany, the Alternative for Germany party considers the killings as justification for its demands for overhauling immigration. A party also testing a closer alliance with the patriotic Europeans against the Islamization of the West, whose weekly anti-Islam rallies are gaining momentum. The Paris tragedy is sure to give Pegida an opportunity to claim vindication after the demonstrations were repeatedly dismissed as xenophobic. Across the pond in Britain, the UK Independence Party says the attacks calls into question the multiculturalism in some European countries. Many say it's still too soon to tell if the Charlie Hebdo attack will cause an anti-Muslim backlash across Europe. But what is clear is that this week's events will provide nationalists more ammunition to sow xenophobia.
Yes, joining us live over the phone to talk about this specific situation is political analyst Sukant Chandan, who joins us on Skype. Thank you very much for joining us, Sukant. Once again, Muslims have unequivocally responded positively to the situation on Thursday, or on Wednesday, sorry, condemning the killing and so on. Now, has that been effective in reducing the inevitable impact?
I don't think it has been effective. I think we need to see the bigger picture here. What these attacks are intended to do, and these two supposed brothers were on the watch list, they're on a US no-fly list, that one of them perhaps had some training from Al-Qaeda in Arab Peninsula in Yemen. So these are actually the hot and cold allies of the West. And the West has really developed a perfect situation for itself in developing white supremacy, racism, in dividing the masses of the population at large between Muslims and the rest. And in the Muslim community, not the entire community, but sizable sections of the Muslim community are actually on board with Western foreign policy, be it in Libya, Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere, in the mass support that the Ikhwani and the pro-Al-Qaeda circles have with the NATO's proxy death squads in the homelands. And on the other hand, they've got the white populations in the West growing with their racist hostility against Muslims. And then the West presents through promoting Al-Qaeda as the enemy to the West. They're promoting a very depraved version of Islam. It's nothing to do with Islam, but they've cultivated this over many generations and recent decades and recent years. So really, I think it's the onus is on anti-racist and anti-imperialists and anyone advocating peace and respect and harmony and mutual respect between communities to really de-link, to leave this neo-colonial Western circus and strategy by which people are playing the roles that they've been given. They're just reading off the script, literally, by which they've been given by the West, to leave it and to join in with the homeland, to join in with our countries and peoples back in the global south who are fighting not only NATO's death squad proxies, but NATO itself as well, and the neo-colonial foreign policy. So really, we need to start just moving away from either this Muslim liberalism or this Eurocentric liberalism, and enter back into the resistance politics, not the resistance tactics. I'm not advocating weapons of any kind in the West in fighting this, but to adopt the politics of the resistance in Syria, in Lebanon, in Libya, etc., as the only viable way of addressing this in terms of analyzing, understanding it correctly, and addressing it.
Sukant, just to bring the discussion closer to Europe, there has been a rise in anti-immigration sentiment and blame on multiculturalism on all this situation that's happened in the last couple of days. Will this situation strengthen far-right groups and their position on anti-immigration?
It will strengthen so-called far-right groups on manifested in two ways. It will strengthen the far-right white racists in Europe, which is obviously doing now, and also it will strengthen the far-right as embodied and in the mirror reflection of the white far-right in the brown-skinned far-right, which are the pro-Al-Qaeda, pro-ISIS, pro-Ikhwani circles as well, who are playing the same role. They're reading from the same script given to them by the West itself.
Right. Now, speaking of scripts and so on, and with the UN, they did call for calm in this current situation. Will that be significant in easing the tensions?
No, it won't. You can't call for calm when you're unleashing these death squads in Libya and Lebanon and Syria and Mali and elsewhere, and then bombing them at the same time. There is no calm on the planet. Things are very intense. Things are very heated at the moment, and what we require is militancy, but not foolishness, but not the type of militancy that strategizes in having own goals and doing a disservice to our people. We have a resistance in the homeland. Let's replicate that in the conditions which we find ourselves in the West here.
So what more can authorities do then to ensure the safety of Muslims currently facing this backlash?
Well, the authorities won't do it because the authorities, by their very nature, are promoting this whole Islamophobic, white supremacist, neo-colonial war agenda, which in the homelands is dividing us, is killing us, is traumatizing us, and ruining our whole communities. And it intends to replicate that in Eurocentric a context, which is not so much war as we have on our homeland, because that's only for the homeland is the war. It's never for the West itself. But in the West itself, it's replicating that here as well. The difference is, in the West, our resistance is very, very weak to non-existent, whereas in the homelands, it is effective.
Now, due to time constraints, Sukant, we're going to have to end it there. Sukant Chandan, political analyst, thank you very much for your time.